Hello. How one may be true to one's character in everything. Chapter 2 of Epictetus' Discourses, Book 1, discusses this topic, and it's very interesting. Epictetus starts this discussion, this discourse, um, about a discussion about rationality and irrationality, and when a person's being rational, when a person's being irrational. And the question is posed right at the beginning of the discourse: um, Is suicide intolerable? And Epictetus says, um, it really depends on the person. The person may commit suicide and be behaving rationally. And, this made me think about a movie called Night Mother with Sissy, Spacek, and Bancroft. This movie's like from the 80s. And it's been a while since I've seen it, but I saw it again a few years ago. But anyway, in the movie, the Sissy Spacek character lives with her mom. She's kind of a early middle age, maybe woman living with her mom named Bancroft, and she has this sort of life with her mom, and she tells her mother one evening that she is going to commit suicide. So, and then of course her mom reacts in horror, the Anne Bancroft character, because to the mom's view, the Sissy Spacek character is behaving irrationally. She's not being rational. So the viewer of the movie, sees this sort of interplay between Sissy Spacek, the daughter, and Anne Bancroft, the mother, and this discussion of life and sort of the meaning of life. And the viewer is sort of left to decide for themselves who is the rational one and who is the irrational one, and who is behaving, who is exhibiting excellence and virtue, and who is not, or maybe they both are in their own ways. It's left up to the viewer really to decide. And I think that movie is a very good illustration of the Stoic principle of death, life and death. The Stoics spent a lot of time discussing death, and the fear of death is one of the things that, to a Stoic, needs to be overcome, because once the sort of innate fear of death has been overcome in an individual, it frees up the individual then to grow in new ways, according to Stoic philosophy. And so this movie sort of illustrates that when is life, at what point, when is death acceptable, and when is it not? So I think another illustration of this is medically assisted suicide, when most people accept that as, if you have been given a prognosis where you have a dire prognosis where there is going to be a lot of suffering on your part, then this would be considered rational then to go ahead and end your life sort of on your own terms before that happened. So that discussion is, it's definitely a central part of Stoic philosophy and something to think about. But that discussion in this discourse is very brief, and it leads then into really more of a discussion of, virtue and character, how to stay true to your character. So Epictetus talks about what is a character, what is a person's character, and only an individual, can determine their own their own character is. So, for example, everyone is different, and everyone has different strengths and different weaknesses, and so different people would react in a situation differently. So Epictetus gives an example of a senator who the Emperor Vespasian tells the senator, don't come to the Senate. And the senator says, well, I have to go to the Senate because I'm a senator. And the Vespasian says, well, okay, you can go to the Senate, but don't speak. And so the senator says, well, if I go to the Senate, I have to speak because part of my role as a senator is to speak. And then Vespasian says, okay, you can speak, but don't speak about this topic. And the senator says, but I have to speak what I think is right. So, he has to stay true to his character. He has to say what he thinks is right. And the Emperor Vespasian then says, but if you say that, I will kill you. And the senator says, well, that's in your power to do. It's also in your power to not make me a senator. But if I am a senator and alive, then I will speak what I think is right. So that's sort of an example of a person staying true to one's character to the extreme, meaning is willing to die for that aspect of their character. And not everyone would have that same line. For example, even another politician might decide it's more virtuous for me to compromise on this point than to be killed in order to speak. Maybe the topic is not central to their character, or maybe the topic is not central to what they would consider displaying their own virtue and excellence. And so it's worth bending on that particular point and not being executed for it, so that maybe there's another bigger goal that individual is trying to reach. And so I think that this sort of illustrates in a way the differences in a person's ability to stay true to their character and at the same time know when to be able to compromise and when to be able to change without really bending their character so much. I hope that's making sense. Epictetus says every person sells at a different price, and I think this sort of sounds bad because it sounds like a sellout. Everyone sells out at a different price, and I don't think that's necessarily what he means. I just think he means that everybody has individual sets of strengths and weaknesses, and everybody has their own character, which is very unique. And whereas one person may decide to not bend, that it is a violation of their character to do X, Y, or Z, another person may feel like it's better for me to go do X, Y, or Z even though I'm inclined to not do it because I have a different aspect or a greater good that I'm trying to accomplish for myself. So another sort of illustration that he uses is about the differences in people, where not everyone can be an Olympic athlete. For example, he says, might not be an Olympic athlete, but I take care of my body and my health. I might not be a philosopher, but I try to, educate myself the best I can. I might, so it's just trying to be the best that you can be given your own individual character, not meaning to hit that extreme with every sort of situation, because I think then a person becomes moralistic and unbending and an ideologue. And I think really good example of that is with politicians today. Sometimes they get criticized for flip-flopping, they call it, where they've changed their mind on a given topic or a given proposal, and sometimes that's seen as showing a lack of character because they've changed their mind or they've changed their view or they've changed their position on something. Given the political situation may have changed, so it may have been politically untenable to hold that position before, and now it is. But I think people a lot of times view this in a very sort of dogmatic, moralistic lens that, oh, they've changed their mind, therefore they are there's some flaw in their character because they're not resolute enough. And I think that actually most people hold politicians probably to that standard when they don't necessarily hold themselves to that standard. Because I think it's very evident that the population and people change their minds over issues all the time, and it's not necessarily a flaw in character to do so. So I hope that made a little bit of sense, made some sense and was a little bit helpful. I think this topic is, it requires daily practice about what's your character. First of all, you have to determine what your character is, and then to be mindful always of if you're staying true to what you value, what your values are, your character is, and when that needs to also change and when it needs to adapt to a given circumstance. The next topic is going to be chapter 3 of the Discourses. It's called What Conclusions May Be Drawn from the Fact That God is the Father of Men. So that should be interesting, so stay tuned for that. And thanks you all for watching, and I will talk to you again soon.